Hi, my name is Michaela Burney, and I'd love to share with you my presentation on the READ Act and diverse learners. How can we comply with our students in mind? So first, I'd like to introduce the READ Act, tell a little bit more about it. Minnesota's Reading to Ensure Academic Development, or READ Act, was established to ensure all Minnesota public school students receive evidence-based literacy instruction aligned with the science of reading, with a special emphasis on foundational skills. As outlined in the legislature, the goal of the READ Act is to have every child reading at or above grade level every year, beginning in kindergarten, and to support multilingual learners and students receiving special education services in achieving their individualized reading goals. Some key elements for implementation of the READ Act are going to be instruction. So our curriculum needs to be aligned with the science of reading. It must include the 5 elements of reading, or the 5 components of reading. And the READ Act strongly emphasizes focusing on foundational skills. So we're going to need a curriculum that has a strong foundational skills base. We also need to make sure to be in compliance that all teachers of literacy and employees making curriculum decisions complete an approved literacy training that includes teaching the 5 components of reading by the 2026-2027 school year. We also need to make sure that we are screening all students in grades kindergarten through 3rd for foundational skills using an approved tool 3 times a year. And this is so that we can identify students who are below grade level. Once we've done that, we need to communicate with parents and guardians to let them know if their student is performing below grade level and offer them an explanation of what services we're offering to their student and give them resources and tools to help them build up their students' reading success at home. We also need to have interventions in place, so students who are reading below grade level must receive literacy interventions to accelerate growth. What is really great about the READ Act is that it is backed by science. We see evidence of Scarborough's reading rope in the legislature as it points out the need for vocabulary, oral language, and background knowledge, as well as the phonological awareness and phonics piece. So the legislature does support us in helping our students integrate those 2 parts of the rope to become skilled readers. It also helps us to address where students are on the ERIES phases of development. So we are assessing these students, so we will be able to determine what phase they're in through the screener and then later plan for instruction for where the student is at on the spectrum to helpfully get them to the consolidated alphabetic phase. Making it personal. So this is where our hard work comes in. We want to make sure that our instruction, of course, is culturally relevant and also artful. The READ Act does provide us with an extensive amount of guidance regarding a science-forward approach to reading instruction. However, there is little information about tailoring this approach to diverse and multilingual learners, like the students we serve, nor is there guidance on how to ensure students are engaged and see the value in reading. By applying the artful instruction model put forth by Page, Young, and Rosinski, as well as Goldie Muhammad's historically responsive literacy framework, to the already evidence-based literacy instruction required by the legislature, we can provide a rigorous and joyful literacy education for our scholars. So we want to make use of this artful instruction model. As illustrated here, we are bound in by the science of reading. So that's always going to be at the forefront of our instruction for literacy. But inside of that instruction, we are going to be using our own judgment to make it authentic, creative, and aesthetic, which is going to further engage students and help them to see the value in reading. So how can we do this? How can we make literacy instruction artful? We can do that by choosing texts that evoke emotion and teaching scholars to express that emotion through responding to text. We can also practice skills in a meaningful way, such as reader's theater, to practice fluency. So rather than having students reread the same text over and over again to self with no other benefit than an improved reading fluency score, we can have students practice to perform for their peers. We can have students reread poems or reread short texts so that they are able to read with prosody and fluency for their peers. Another way we can include artful instruction is by using games, songs, and chants in our phonemic awareness and phonics instruction, and also by providing opportunities for hands-on or multi-sensory learning. So that could look like using Elkonin boxes and manipulatives such as counters or bears to help students practice blending words and putting together sounds in a way that is fun and enjoyable. We also want to make sure, especially because we serve a predominantly multilingual language or multilingual learners community, we want to make sure that we are using a culturally responsive framework. This historically responsive literacy framework put forth by Gholdy Muhammad is a really helpful one. These 4 components of this framework are identity, so helping students to make sense of themselves and others; skills, so those standards and proficiencies; intellect, gaining and using knowledge in a meaningful way; and criticality, reading and analyzing text through a lens of equity and anti-oppression. So for affirming identity, we want to be choosing texts that reflect the classroom demographic, but also being careful to include texts about cultures that are not represented in class to expand our scholars' worldview. We want to connect phonics and phonemic awareness instruction to heritage languages as well. So anytime that there is a cognate, or if there are sounds and letters that are similar, we want to highlight that to include the student's identity. We also want to invite students to write about and share their cultural experiences, and welcome parents as guest readers to better understand our students culturally and to make them feel affirmed. We also want to keep the skills in mind. I'm not going to spend too much time on skills because those are always going to be there. We always need to keep the standards in mind, and we always need to assess those and tailor our instruction based on where the students are in their acquisition of those skills. In doing so, we want to also build intellect. So reading for inquiry and pleasure, including opportunities for real-world connections, like reading and evaluating claims made by advertisements, or reading and writing about current events. We want to also include social and emotional learning into that intellect piece as part of the classroom routine, as these skills will serve our students well into their adult lives. Criticality is also a big part of this framework, and that means that we are allowing students to have an opportunity to evaluate what they're learning with an anti-oppression lens. So that could be having students compare literary representations of culture, having students read about current political events and interrogate them through the lens of anti-oppression, and also having students to read autobiographical accounts of injustice and respond with their own understanding of injustices today. In closing, I'd like to leave you with this quote by Toni Morrison: "If you are free, you need to free somebody else. If you have some power, then your job is to empower somebody else." It is our job to empower our students through evidence-based practices while also infusing culturally relevant and artful practices to make that learning useful, fun, and engaging. Thank you so much.